Hello everyone! Welcome to another video on our channel. Today we are going to talk about one of the most fascinating and misunderstood creatures in the animal kingdom: ravens. Get ready to discover why these black-feathered birds are considered the true geniuses of the bird world. When we think of intelligent animals, we usually remember dolphins, chimpanzees, or elephants. But did you know that ravens possess cognitive abilities that rival some primates? That's right. These birds from the corvidae family, which also includes crows and jays, have extraordinary brains in relatively small bodies. To begin understanding how impressive ravens are, let's talk about their memory. A raven can remember human faces for years. In experiments, scientists wore masks while capturing ravens to tag them. Even after a long time, when someone appeared wearing the same mask, the ravens not only recognized that person as a threat, but also communicated this danger to other ravens who had never seen that mask before. Impressive, isn't it? Furthermore, ravens possess an incredible problem-solving ability. In a famous experiment, scientists placed food in a narrow tube with water up to a certain height, impossible to reach directly. The raven then picked up small stones and threw them into the water, raising its level until it could get the food. This demonstrates not only an understanding of cause and effect, but also the ability to plan actions in sequence. But perhaps the most impressive skill is the creation and use of tools. Ravens don't just use twigs to capture insects, they also shape these twigs to make them more efficient. Ravens have been observed bending wires to create hooks and reach food in hard-to-access places. Think about it. A bird capable of understanding that it can transform a material to create something useful. This is a level of abstraction that very few animals possess. In New Caledonia, an island in the Pacific, ravens have developed a tool-making culture that passes from generation to generation. The chicks observe their parents creating and using tools, and then reproduce this behavior. Yes, we're talking about cultural transmission, something that for a long time was thought to be exclusive to humans and some primates. The raven's brain, despite being small in absolute size, has an impressive neuronal density. The part responsible for advanced cognition, called the nidopallium caudolateral, is proportionally as developed as the neocortex of primates. This allows these birds to process complex information and make sophisticated decisions. Have you heard about the experiences of Betty, the New Caledonian raven? In the laboratory, Betty not only used a wire to create a hook and get food, but she also improvised when the pre-made hook was removed by another raven. She took a straight piece of wire and bent it to create her own hook. This demonstrates a mental flexibility that goes far beyond instinct. Ravens also master a form of metacognition, the ability to think about their own thinking. In experiments, when confronted with difficult tasks, they are able to pass instead of risking and making mistakes, showing that they are aware of the limits of their own knowledge. This is something we thought was exclusive to human beings and some highly evolved primates. Speaking of communication, ravens possess a complex language. Different types of caws communicate different messages, from danger alerts to calls for social gatherings. Researchers have already identified more than 20 distinct vocalizations in some raven species, each with a specific meaning. Additionally, they can imitate sounds from the environment, including human voices in some cases. Ravens also demonstrate complex social behaviors. They form monogamous couples that last a lifetime and have extended family structures where juveniles help raise new chicks. Researchers have observed ravens consoling others after conflicts, indicating empathy. Another characteristic we thought was predominantly human. One of the most surprising abilities of ravens is their causal reasoning. In one experiment, ravens observed a human entering a cabin, but another person leaving it. The ravens continued to observe the cabin, clearly understanding that the first human should still be inside. This shows that they understand that objects continue to exist even when they are not visible, what we call object permanence. Ravens are also masters of strategic deception. When storing food, if they perceive that they are being observed by other ravens, they frequently pretend to hide the food in one place, but actually take it to another place when the observer is not looking. This requires not only understanding that others have different perspectives, theory of mind, but also deliberately planning to deceive, an extraordinarily advanced cognitive ability. Did you know that ravens can recognize and remember not only human faces, but also distinguish between different cars and associate them with positive or negative experiences? In urban areas, they learn which cars belong to people who feed them and which belong to people who represent threats. The raven's self-control capability is also impressive. In experiments similar to the famous marshmallow test, conducted with children, ravens can wait for larger rewards instead of immediately taking smaller rewards, demonstrating not only patience but understanding that waiting can bring greater benefits. In some cultures around the world, ravens have a negative reputation, associated with death and bad omens. This probably comes from the fact that they are scavengers, they feed on carcasses, and their black plumage. However, in other cultures, such as among indigenous peoples of northwestern North America, ravens are revered as creators, transformers, and divine messengers. In Norse mythology, Odin, the main god, had two ravens named Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, who flew around the world every day and returned to tell Odin everything they saw and heard. This association with wisdom and knowledge seems quite appropriate, considering what we know today about the intelligence of these birds. Ravens have a surprisingly long life expectancy for birds of their size. They can live up to 30 years in the wild. This allows them to accumulate experiences and knowledge over decades, contributing to their exceptional intelligence. The longer they live, the more they learn, and the more complex their behaviors become. Speaking of learning, ravens are extremely adaptable. With urban expansion, many raven species have learned not only to survive but to thrive in human environments. They have discovered how to open trash cans, how to use car traffic to crack nuts, leaving them on the road for vehicles to run over, and even how to use traffic lights to determine when it's safe to land and collect the cracked nuts. A fascinating behavior observed in ravens is what appears to be some kind of funeral ritual. When a raven dies, other ravens often gather around the body, vocalizing in a distinct manner. For a long time, scientists thought this was just to alert about possible dangers, but recent studies suggest there may be a more complex social component, possibly some form of mourning or recognition of death. Ravens also have a surprising sense of justice. In experiments where two ravens received different rewards for the same work, the raven that received the smaller reward often refused to continue participating. This sense of equity is something that, again, we thought was mainly human. The raven's ability to solve complex puzzles often surpasses that of children aged 5 to 7 years. In a famous experiment involving a series of steps to obtain food, including using tools in a specific sequence, adult ravens consistently outperform children in the mentioned age range. This doesn't mean that ravens are smarter than human children in general, but it demonstrates their extraordinary specialization in certain types of problem solving. It's worth noting that all these cognitive abilities evolved independently from ours. The last common ancestor between humans and ravens lived more than 300 million years ago. This means that advanced intelligence evolved at least twice on Earth through completely different paths, a phenomenon called convergent evolution. It's as if nature had found more than one way to produce complex minds. In the laboratory, ravens have already demonstrated understanding the concept of zero, a mathematical abstraction that few species comprehend. They can order sets of objects by quantity and understand that no object is less than one object. This understanding of abstract numerosity is extremely rare in the animal kingdom. The cognitive flexibility of ravens is truly remarkable. Unlike many animals that have highly specialized but not very adaptable behaviors, ravens can improvise solutions to completely new problems that they would never encounter in nature. It's as if they had a mental toolbox that they can creatively apply to unprecedented situations. Neuroscience studies have revealed that, despite the obvious anatomical differences between bird and mammal brains, ravens possess brain structures that function analogously to our prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for complex planning, personality, and decision-making. It's a fascinating example of how evolution can arrive at similar solutions through completely different paths. Ravens also demonstrate individual preferences and distinct personalities. Some are more cautious, others more daring. Some are more sociable, others more solitary. This individual variability is another indication of the mental complexity of these birds. They are not robots programmed by instinct, but individuals with their own characteristics. Recent experiments suggest that ravens may have some form of consciousness. When confronted with their own image in a mirror, they don't demonstrate the typical self-recognition we see in chimpanzees or dolphins, but they show behaviors that suggest they are aware of seeing something unusual. The question of animal consciousness is, of course, one of the most complex in neuroscience, but ravens are certainly among the most intriguing candidates for investigation. In terms of spatial problem solving, ravens stand out extraordinarily. They can navigate complex mazes, remember the location of hundreds of food caches, and even understand simple maps. Their spatial memory is so developed that they can remember where they hid specific foods for up to 6 months. One aspect that deserves attention is how these birds manage to have such powerful brains in relatively small bodies. Part of the answer lies in neural density. Ravens' neurons are smaller and more densely grouped than those of mammals. Additionally, their brain is extremely energy efficient. This efficiency allows them to maintain advanced cognitive capabilities without requiring the enormous energy expenditure that our brains demand. The learning capacity of ravens continues throughout their lives. Unlike many animals that have critical learning periods in youth, ravens continue to learn, adapt, and incorporate new information even in old age. This continuous brain plasticity is another factor that contributes to their extraordinary intelligence. Studies with captive ravens have revealed that they can understand basic physical principles such as gravity, solidity, and causality. For example, they understand that solid objects cannot pass through other solid objects, or that unsupported objects will fall. This intuitive understanding of physics is extremely sophisticated. Ravens also seem to have something similar to a sense of humor. Observers report that they sometimes appear to engage in behaviors that can only be described as pranks, pulling tails of other animals, sliding down snowy roofs apparently for fun, or even surfing in the air using thermal currents when there is no need to save energy. A particularly fascinating curiosity, ravens in urban environments have been observed placing nuts at road intersections during red lights, waiting for cars to pass and break the shells during green lights, and then returning to collect the contents when the light turns red again. This demonstrates not only an understanding of causality, cars break nuts, but also comprehension of complex human systems like traffic lights. In short, ravens represent one of the most extraordinary examples of animal intelligence on the planet. Their ability to solve problems, use tools, communicate in complex ways, and adapt to constantly changing environments rivals that of many primates. And all this in a brain the size of a walnut. The next time you see a raven, remember, you're not just looking at just another black bird. You are observing one of the most sophisticated minds that evolution has produced, a true winged genius that, despite having followed a completely different evolutionary path from ours, has arrived at remarkably similar cognitive solutions. It's amazing to think that we share our world with such intelligent creatures, and even more amazing to consider that we understand only the surface of their capabilities. As science advances and we develop more sophisticated methods to study animal cognition, who knows what other surprising abilities we will discover in these fascinating corvids. So, the next time you hear someone using the expression bird brain as a synonym for low intelligence, tell that person about ravens. These impressive birds remind us that intelligence in nature comes in many forms and sizes, and that we should never underestimate the cognitive complexity that can exist even in seemingly simple creatures. And you? Have you ever had an interesting experience with ravens? Have you observed any intelligent behavior of these fascinating birds? Share in the comments. If you like this video, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more content about the wonders of the animal world. Until the next video.